Hey guys, what's going on? This is Brad from the Ad Army, and today we are going to go over a review and basically the first How to Budget series focusing on Digimon and me talking about why Agumon and Greymon are basically the best decks you should invest into and maybe the only decks you need. But before that, I want to welcome you all if you're new here or not, and for this is Giving Week, where essentially for this week, also because of Thanksgiving, I'm going to give you 7 days of upload content. I really like doing this because it pushes me to the limit. I pushed me to the limit before, and I want to go above and beyond before to go and take over the limit. So, stuff like that. But more importantly than that, I really want to give it a shot because trying to make this like a more of a regular thing has been kind of tough for me the last week because it's just I had a lot of stuff to do family wise and work wise. And for all of you who are sticking it out or they want to see more of my content, I do appreciate that. So it gives me the inspiration to keep going forward, and I hope it gives you the resolve to keep coming here. So today, since this is day one, I wanted to start it off with a different flip, because usually I would start with like one of the Digimon lore series, but I want to do something a bit different because I've fallen back in love with Digimon and I want to show that appreciation to it in a different way, because I think the card game, believe it or not, is one of my favorite avenues so far. I actually got into the card game when it started out back in 2020, and I'm not talking about all the other card games before. I never played them, so I'm not going to act like I'm some pro on that. It's just this was the first game I jumped into. I've always been a Yu-Gi-Oh player prior to that, but when I saw that they were making a card game for Digimon, I kind of wanted to get in on it. My heart got like revitalized during high school of these Digimon coming back. So I really wanted to take my opportunity to jump back in, and I'm just so happy that this is here. So I want to start off to try to help out new players. Maybe you're a returning player who hasn't played since like BT1 or something like that, because this is one of those interesting things that I want to kind of throw out there to you because it's pretty interesting. Now, the reason I say it's pretty interesting is that we have a lot of things here that are a bit different than normal. The reason I say a bit different than normal is because we have a focus on specifically Greymon and Agumon as a typing or an archetyping, and we do have Omnimon, of course, as well. But my main topic here is that focusing on why you would even want to pick these up. And my biggest reason why is that Agumon and Greymon are the most heavily supported archetype in the game. We have flavors for everybody from red to black to yellow, and even different variant Agumons in different colors, not necessarily the Greymons, but the Agumons. So we do have a lot going for you there. And then kind of moving into why I think this is really good for people. There's a lot of cards that probably need some type of, focus. And Agumon and Greymon is one that is no short for focus when it comes to a game. Now, being a Yu-Gi-Oh player, you've always had maybe a deck or something that you wanted to see supported, and it just never does. Now, what if I told you you were a fan favorite deck and you just get support all the time? Heck, sign me up, right? And that's where we are here. So focusing more on Agumon Greymon, we have so much to actually work with. It's nuts. And actually getting into it, I'm going to pick just from the start of kind of what you can do and what you should do and see if you guys enjoy it and try to go from there. Now, as a beginner, where do you want to start for Digimon? First, you want to pick a strategy you like. For Agumon and Greymon, you actually don't have to look for, as there's a lot of adaptable playstyles for you. For Agumon specifically, or the red variants, you actually have aggression as well as control. And you also have a hybrid variant, which is red-yellow with Shine Greymon, which combines the aspects of control with more of the yellow focus, which is, DP reduction, which is something they do, which is basically like reducing attack to 0, and then Digimon get destroyed in this game. Now, we have the black variants of Agumon as well, which focus more on defensive options, whether they're the original Agumon, which is orange and is just a black card, which is more defensive, focusing on blocking, memory control, maybe forcing your opponent to attack, as well as the Black War Greymon variant, which if you're a fan of the anime, you might remember Black War Greymon. He has his own line. He ends up having more of a control-based style, which allows him to be more aggressive in terms of swinging in by destroying the opponent's Digimon and their tamers, their sources, their resources, but also, basically being a defensive wall with his X-Antibody variant, which allows him to basically force the opponent to attack him if they want to attack, which is pretty impressive. And it basically focuses on those resources. Also, the red one and black one sometimes have different ways of attacking unsuspended Digimon, so you have that as well. Also, if you're just a strict Agumon fan, you'd be hard pressed to know that there's actually a pure Agumon deck, basically in the form of Agumon Bond of Courage, which allows you to effectively play out, if you've watched Kizuna, you have access to that. So yeah, pretty much you have a wide range area of basically where you want to go with this archetype, and it's not even including the yellow red version I talked about with Shine Greymon, because it exists as well, but that's more of a deck tailored to its own strategy. So keep those all in mind. We got to move into basically where do we want to go. So if we were to start with basically the red version, which is what most people end up playing, and I don't blame you because that's where I ended up, and I actually didn't want to play the red version at first. I always wanted to play Black War Greymon, but it took so long to get to the TCG for me. I was already playing other decks, so when it finally arrived in BT11, and I mean full power in BT11, I was already on another deck at the time. So let's talk about what we would need to build the red version. So the red version obviously starts off with focusing on red Agumon Greymon, or basically the original one from Adventure, and we can go to Coromon, which is basically going to be our egg for the decks, and we have a few we could pick from. Personally though, if I'm going to pick a Coromon for my deck, there's a few options you have. Now, if you want more DP or more attack basically for this game, you may want to focus on using something like Coromon from X Record or BT9, because it gives you 1,000 extra DP when you're Agumon or Greymon in its name. So basically you just get that additional buff to attack. Now, if you want something more focused on being able to get you advantage, you have two cards to choose from. One in the form of Coromon from BT14 and Blast Ace, which allows you to draw a card when you remove a card from your opponent's security stack, or when a card is removed from your opponent's security stack. So there's a bit of rulings there, guys, but don't worry about it. You also have access to something like the Coromon from BT5, which is basically the most generic one in my opinion, which allows you to draw a card every time you attack with that Digimon, so really useful. There's also the new Coromon, which these two are both black, but I still want to talk about them anyways, because you'll see in a little second. Both of them, which is effectively the first one, which is the new one from the Dragon of Courage structure deck, which allows you to, when your opponent's target is switched, your Digimon gains 1,000 DP, effectively using the blocker mechanic, which the black variant of Agumons can do. And also BT11's Coromon, which is when an opponent's Digimon is deleted, if a Digimon with Greymon in its name is here, you draw a card. So effectively, either a block or with Black War Greymon X's ability to force them to attack it, you have the ability to draw cards. So all those are basically netted. There's also yellow Coromon for the effects of the Shine Greymons, so you could use those. Heck, there's even the Coromon all the way from this first starter deck, which is just Coromon. When you have 4 more sources, you gain 1,000 DP. That one actually has been used in a lot of decks, and I've seen some decks actually choose to run it. Not really recently, but maybe a format ago, I saw some people teching it because they did want that extra DP and they had long source Digimon. So there's options there. But basically, the Coromon I probably suggest picking up is definitely going to be BT5s. You have 2 printings to choose from, so effectively, the world's your oyster on that one. You can pick up the rares, you can pick up the commons. There's even the extremely expensive Premier Tournament official Coromon, which has Greymon, Bodemon, and Coromon. I really want one of those at some point. So yeah, there's that one as well. So you have your options there, but I'm picking the one from BT5 just because the +1 draw is so good. So when we move into Agumons, the funny thing here is, where do you want to go? Because you have so many options. Since we're focusing on the red version as well, let's just start with Agumon that's going to be a mandatory 4 of, and that's actually going to be BT11's Agumon. So BT11's BT12 actually, sorry, because BT11 has another Agumon, but that's a separate Agumon. BT12's Agumon is arguably the best searcher for the entire strategy because it's a dual colored rookie focusing on black-red, which allows you to net both a Greymon, a Taikaimiya, and also Omnimon if you search it out, if you want it instead. So you get a bit of an options there, but the reason this one specifically ends up being on the top of the pedestal, is that being black and red really just allow it to bridge into any of the strategies you want, but also allows you, if you want to play maybe specifically the red base or the black base, it's one of the only Agumons that allows you to go on top of any Coromon. So it's a bridge for your other cards. So basically keep it as that. It's just the bridge to get you to your top end. So if you're playing the black variant or the red variant, you have access to it. So there's that. And obviously, the new one that we're going to talk about is Agumon from Blastace. He is just really good. He Digivolves on top of any Coromon for 0, so he can go on top of a black or red Digi-Egg. So it's really helpful. And then his effect is actually really powerful at the start of your main phase. You can Digivolve him for free as long as you have a Tai Kamiya in play. And effectively, that's really good into a Greymon. So basically, you get a free Greymon as long as you set up a tamer. And it doesn't even take any of your memory, so you can go straight into an ultimate if you want right there. Also, he has just a generic effect to give you 2000 DP. So just really, really good. And it really combos well with the black-red Agumon because that one gives you 1000, this one gives you 2000. So basically, you're always building extra DP for your stack. Now, the other mandatory 4-of is going to be Auman X, specifically the red one for this version, because there is the black version Auman X, but you're not going to use it in a red base because it doesn't really synergize too well. But yeah, we have the black or the red base Auman X. Basically, you search the top 3 cards of your deck, and you get to add a Greymon, an Omnimon, or an X antibody, and an X antibody. So you get to pick between the 2 of those, and then grab an X antibody. Really useful, really good searcher. A free draw if you just need the extra draw, because you know a 0 Evo cost on top of a rookie is just really good. And basically, your last 2 can be anything you want, because I would always say run 14 rookies because it's an optimal number. So depending on what you want to go with, there's a few options. One of the first ones is obviously BT5s because it's an additional searcher. You have a copy of the ones from EX1 Agumon, which is just an additional searcher as well, but it's a searcher and inheritable. So what it does is it's going for when you swing, you get to like look for the ties or Greymon, so it's one of the something like that. So it really generates advantage that way. You could even play the generic Agumons if you want, like the one all the way from the structure deck, which just gives you 1000 DP because it's just a solid card. But also you have access to something like the Agumon from where is it? The Agumon from the video game promos, effectively, is what they are. The ones from Digimon Survivor, because those have a popping effect. So if you want like something really generic and different, you could use that one. So basically, those are all your red Agumons there. 14 is the number I would go with just because it's the most for consistency, but also not too bad of a number to work with. There's also Promo Agumon who gives 2000 DP, but at this point you don't necessarily need him if you don't want to, because you have access to different Agumons now that already have 2k buffs. So when you move into Greymons, the one thing that you have to keep in mind is if we're in a red base, one of the mandatory cards I think you have to consider immediately is going to be a 4 of the structure deck Greymon, the one that gives you security attack +1. It's very hard to pass it up because it's just such a good effect and a good searching effect. It really does just give you so much for what it is, and it's really hard to just not play it at all because it's just so good. So yeah, pretty much that's it. Just security attack +1. So really good. Moving into the other ones that are mandatories, usually you're running your X antibody lines, which is 4 Greymon X, and the one copy of the black virus variant, which is blue, but it's a black-red because of its amazing effect. When you Digivolve with a Digimon with 2 colors, you reduce the cost by that Digimon's color. So with your Metal Greymon that's a black-red, you're reducing it by 2, making it a 1 cost usually. So that's really good. You also have a few other variants you could choose for your Greymon lineup. The next one that comes to mind is going to be the one from BT5, which is when you Digivolve on top of Agumon. If Agumon's in the sources, you gain a memory back. So I'm basically making this cost a 1 cost Evo, and it gives a static 2k buff to Omnimon or Greymon. So right there, that's a really good card. I don't think you pass that up because it's just a good generic card to pick up. So basically, your Greymons are all locked up already with what you want to play. There's a little bit of a variance. You could even play the Blastace one if you want like a new cheeky way to play Greymon, which gives a little bit of a rushing strategy, but you don't have to. There's also some searchability with like EX1's Greymon, which lets you play out the the Tai Kamiyas with a 3 cost or less from your hand, but it has to be an inheritable. And even something from like BT1 on your turn, you get 2000 DP. The other Greymon that's definitely a consideration if you're not already playing it, because you're probably playing some number of champions between like 12, 13, 14 as well, just because it gives you a higher chance to match with your rookies, and usually the play costs are just a little bit lower to get you going. Greymon from Across Time or BT12 is really good because when you Digivolve, if you don't have tie in play, you play one. So that's already just massive, playing a tamer for free. And also you get a static buff on all turns. So all turns you get 1000 DP. So right there, that's just really, really strong. And it being able to Digivolve from black or red means any Agumon can fit the bill. So it's just really, really good. Moving into Metal Greymons, because I think we can just pass up the rest of the Greymons here, because they're all either different colors or they don't focus on anything else. So when we go into Metal Greymon, this is where it gets interesting. I think one of the mandatory cards you have to play for Metal Greymon is going to be the one from BT12, because it's just too strong to not play it. And BT12's Metal Greymon is just so strong because it allows you to effectively, with the promo, go into a 1 cost Evo, but more importantly, when you attack, you get to use its raid ability to switch targets, and when you do that, you're going to immediately use its effect to play a Tamer out, black or red, from your hand. So it's just really, really good. And ultimately, it gives an inheritable of Piercing, so you don't want to pass that up as an option for your deck, just because it's just really good. When it comes to your other Metal Greymons you could play that aren't going to be the X Antibody versions, it's a little bit tougher, because if you're playing it in a specifically red only variant, your Metal Greymons are not necessarily bad. It's just more of they're too either slow or they're specifically designed for a different strategy. So of them, the only ones that's like pseudo generic to play in the deck that would work is maybe the Metal Greymon from Next Adventure or BT7, which is just generically when you attack with one of your opponent's Digimon is deleted, you gain a memory. And then also when you hard play it, if you don't have a Tamer, you play a Tamer. But also if you want to as well, what you could do is if you have the Tamer, you reduce the memory to like 2. So basically you play it for 5 cost. So a little bit debatable. So the rest of them can be filled up with the Metal Greymon X's. But there's also the new option of playing Metal Greymon Ace. Now, Metal Greymon Ace isn't necessarily a bad card for the red version. The only problem, I think, is it's not necessarily as impactful when you blast Digivolve, because when you bring this one into play, it's effectively, how do I put this? It deletes a Digimon with 6000 DP or less. So effectively, this is only really working is if it's the early game, and your opponent chooses to make a big swing, it's for some reason, and you just go pop. Otherwise, it's not that good, sadly. I really think they could have done just a little bit more, but I think they didn't want to outbalance the Ace for the Greymon so far, because they already had one in the black the black War Greymon. That's so, there's a lot to be desired there, but hey, you could play it if you want. It's not bad, because playing it for 4 costs for an ultimate, that's just pretty strong. So you have that as an option. But as of course, Metal Greymon X immediately takes the spot as being one of your choices, because although it's not necessarily the best one, it has a 3 cost Evo for evolution on top of your champion, so it doesn't cost too much, so it can keep you under from passing the turn. Also, its effect to effectively gain a security attack +1, but also if you have Greymon underneath, you gain that additional DP as well. So basically, it makes the Metal Greymon really, really big. And then if you're running X, well, obviously you're going to be running X Antibody. When you're running these additional cards, you're just basically going to pressure more. So it's just really good. And then it lasts until the end of your opponent's turn. So one weird thing you could do then is if you go ahead and Digivolve this thing on top of your Metal Greymon, you get your DP buff, you get your additional security check. You're probably never going to use it though, unfortunately, for that turn. You Digivolve into a blocker, and now it has a 3000 extra DP, and it's pretty bulky, so it's going to survive an attack from whatever, or be too big for them to swing over. So there's options, is how I put it. There's options. Now, when we move into something else, besides the Metal Greymon X's, we have pretty much that's about it for your top end outside of Alterius mode if you want to play it. The biggest problem with Alterius mode is that it's not cheap, guys, if you want to play the good Alterius mode. And yes, there's a good and a bad Alterius mode, because there's the original Alterius mode all the way from BT5, which has an interesting effect, but it doesn't cost 0 for its Evo. And more importantly, it doesn't necessarily do too much. However, you could play it as an option if you can't afford the Alterius mode from the BT9, I think, exclusive pack it was, or the promo pack, that one. So don't feel bad if you can't get your hands on that one. I only have one copy. I've only ever run one copy because I bought a box of BT9. Okay, so moving into War Greymons, this is where it kind of changes up, because on the top of the red end, you could play literally 3 different cores if you want. And the reason I say 3 different cores is that you have access to so many different Digimon here. So when we're looking at the ones that you do have access to, you have a few. For the War Greymons, obviously, you don't want to pass up the one from BT12 or from across time, because that one is just so strong. It has raid, it has the ability to have reboot, when it can restand itself when opponents or the attack target switches. It's just really, really solid all the way around. And also, it just is really good. So I would personally pick up at least 1 or 2 if you don't want to spend too much money. There's the other option you could play is BT1's War Greymon. That card is still, I think, really, really good. Having a generic security attack +1 and also being able to just effectively turn off options when it checks security. Absolutely fantastic. I think it's something you don't pass up if you want to run it. So don't feel pressured to not play it at all, because that's how I look at that one. For your other War Greymons, we could pick a few, or like at least 2. There's a new one from BT14. The warping one is really good, but I'm personally going to say it's up to you if you want to play it. You don't have to. It's pretty solid. Just, it's not the best thing ever, but it's not bad. We also have effectively, I think that's all the good War Greymon. Yeah, because you could play the War Greymon Ace, which happens to be a black card, but you can still play it because it generically digivolves on top of your red Greymons. So you have that as an option. If you don't want to go with that one, we also can go into the Black War Greymon route, which is very neat. I think that you can just like literally switch it up. But yeah, you can really decide to do that if you really want to switch it up. Go Black War Greymon. You specifically have to play 4 Black War Greymons from New Awakening or BT8, because we still don't have a new Black War Greymon that can digivolve on top of red besides that one and its X Anybody counterpart. So you have access to those copies, guys. So those are the ones I'm going to recommend. And finally, we have my dark horse favorite of the variants, that if you really want to be the guy who goes off the wall, you could try, and that's going to be Guilmon. So Guilmon comes out here as being the the forgotten family of the Greymon lineage, which is basically just, people just don't play it as much. It's really good because it basically insulated to its own top end. So Guilmon from the EX4 basically can burn security or pop your opponent's Digimon, and then immediately digivolves into its counterpart, which is the Guilmon from BT9, which is actually really crazy, because this basically means you can go from one to the other and then do a security attack +1, de-digivolve, because of how Guilmon works, the one from X Record, being able to just eventually de-digivolve your opponent's Digimon and basically punish them. So you have access to that. So your top end can be whatever you want there, because the reason I chose those is that they're both black and red. So if you're doing just red, you literally can play any of those top ends if you want. But if you're playing specifically maybe black variants, you can go with either of those, or even the War Greymons that happen to be specifically in the black color. You can play those. Now, when it comes to Omnimons, which are usually going to be the ones to recommend, I'm just going to recommend Blitz Omni here. It being reprinted and that it being finally cheaper again. I wouldn't be able to not tell you not to pick that up. That's just too good in my opinion. So, those are my choices. For that, like Blitz Omni is probably the only ones you're gonna need. You could pick up the X Antibody version of, Omegamon or Omnimon from the BT5, which is just like Utopia from Yu-Gi-Oh, where you send 2 of the evil sources to the grave and you stop an attack. So you have that as like an option. Don't have to. Also, there's Auman X from the BT11, I believe. That one or BT10 actually, yeah. So you can play that one. It checks your opponent's security, rips one out, It's pretty interesting. You don't need to play it, but there are options. For your option cards, which is finally something I'm going to turn to, you have to almost automatically play your X antibodies because they're just really good. Play one or two. You can play Cool Boy for additional searching and tamers, but we'll talk about that in a second. The thing is with this deck, it's very Digimon heavy, so you're not really playing too many options. You're playing a few, but not too many. So maybe a slot for like 2 or 3, and that's about it, guys. Like for options, because the deck really is insulated to its Digimon because it's very consistent. So the option cards, pretty much, you could play anything. I think Hades Force is probably like the most the one you could use if you want, but if you can't afford Hades Force, definitely try something like was it Crimson Blaze? I think that card is really good. You could even play, for whatever reason you want to play, Gaia Force, or even I keep forgetting what the War Greymon X card is, but you could play that one where it basically it lets you attack and delete. So kind of similar to Hades Force, but different for what it does. But you could play that one as well. Moving into Tamers, it really depends on what you want to do with your deck. My variant that I played before, that was like Greymon Tribal, it had a lot of the black and red Tamers. Like it had good Tai Kaimiyas, really good like Yu Yakuga. It ran those Digimon to really give your deck some type of way to play. So I'm giving you guys that option if you want to like adapt it to play black specifically red specifically. You can use those tamers because they all have beneficial effects for different niches. So it's really up to you. But yeah, pretty much that's what I've got for you today, guys, about kind of how to budget with it. It did sound more of like kind of a way to go about it, but the reason why I wanted to talk about the basically this like lineage of the deck is because there's so many rarities for certain cards that you can, or if you want to wait, there may be more later. So me running down basically Agumon is pretty much the best way to understand what this is about, because it gives you that opportunity to understand basically how much you can work with. Now for the budgeting thing, because this is actually very short, you could put together a decent deck depending on how frugal you want to be with it, easily for about $60 is where I'm going with the number, actually $60. Some people might find that's a little bit like that's too little. My reasoning is, if we're talking about just like the bare bones to get the deck going, $60 could do it. And my reasoning is, we have reprinted Coromon eggs, not expensive. We have effectively our most expensive cards are probably going to be Raid War Greymon. And the rest of the deck is actually fairly cheap because a lot of it's been reprinted. Heck, we could probably do it for under 60, probably maybe $40, as long as we don't go to max rarity, because there's a lot of cards in here that they're not too expensive. That's the thing, is if I was thinking about it, $40 is because it's not too expensive. Like, I think the most expensive card is going to be Raid War Greymon if we're going to play it. So yeah, and if you want to play a somewhat budget version of the deck, you could even just skip War Greymon if you want to go into something like Guilemon, which is really neat. It's extremely budget because you just get the supers that are cheaper, so about $3-4. You can probably get them all for about 12. And then even since Guilemon was a rare in EX4, he's extremely cheap. So basically your deck is pretty low, because you can switch up to a black base if you want, which would make the deck even cheaper. But yeah, basically I think about $40-50 is where you would be. You have options for your Metal Greymons. You have options for Metal Greymon X. You don't have to even pick up Alterius mode if you don't want to. Yeah, pretty much War Greymon is going to be the thing that costs the most money. And your Tamers are pretty solid. So, yeah, pretty much, guys. I hope this guide was helpful. That's what's called starting out. A little bit of a budget run, but more so to focus on why Greymon is so good. Because all of these decks are somewhat top tier or tier contending. And this deck will never die. More support will come. And it'll make it invincible. So pretty much, guys, that's what I have for you today. Please enjoy. Day 2 of Giving Week will come out tomorrow. And yeah, I hope you guys had a great day. And as always, I'm Brad from the Ad Army signing off. And for all of you out there, to sign on.